This is a question about the monastic life, I guess. Why don't you eat after 1 o'clock? Surely food is to nourish and sustain the body. Isn't not eating a form of austerity? What does it achieve by going without? Would it be better to eat smaller meals more regularly or spaced out wider during the day? Did the Buddha abstain from eating after 1 p.m.? So originally, when the Buddha set up the order, the Sangha, monks could eat more or less any time of day, and they were going and bothering people in the evening and frightening women in the lightning under a thunderstorm and tripping over things. So he decided for 2 reasons, personally because of that, but also because he himself found himself sufficiently nourished on 1 meal a day. He encouraged the monks to eat 1 meal a day, but he said you can eat between dawn and when the sun is at the zenith, that's midday in winter, 1 o'clock in the summer here in Britain. So he allowed, if they really needed another meal, they could have it, although he encouraged them to have 1 meal. So there came a tradition whereby those monks who needed it could eat gruel, rice gruel or something like this in the early morning because they were suffering from weakness or they were likely to get a bit unwell. And that's the tradition that we've adopted in Britain. Now you'll note in Asia, in Thailand for example, they tend to have just 1 meal a day. It's around 8 o'clock or 9 in the morning after the alms round. And that's it. They might have some kind of sweet thing or a special vegetable which is regarded as a medicine in the afternoon, but otherwise they don't eat. It's just drinks. But here we came to the conclusion that just 1 meal a day was not sufficient, particularly as in the early years monks were having to do a lot of physical labour, manual labour. So they ended up by having a small breakfast. It used to be just a cup of rice gruel and then a main meal around 11 or 11:30. Now gradually the breakfast got better, so we have 2 meals really. And to be honest, I think all 3 of us feel that's sufficient for us. We've got used to the rhythm. For you it's going to be difficult. If you're on 3 meals a day and you come into that suddenly without any sort of practice, then it's difficult, And if you're young and you've got your body's hungry, that can be difficult. And yes, on some levels I would agree with you, it would be nicer to have smaller meals through the day, but this is the way he set it up. It's to create simplicity, so that when the monks and nuns go for alms round, they would just bother people once a day, and the people know when they're coming. So the advantage of this is that it opens up the afternoon and the evening. You're not always thinking about food, you're not cooking food, and your stomach has a chance to process the food. So later in the evening you've got a nice, clear system to meditate with. That's one advantage. But I agree, there are some people, and even some monks, novices, who have great difficulties because of the dietary restrictions. They struggle. And so sometimes they're allowed a bit of extra cheese in the evening or something like that. Someone who's on diabetes may have real problems with this diet. But so they say about prospective monks, what he needs is a good stomach, a good back, and good knees. Dear Ajahn, are there ways to control proliferation? It's a good question because we don't always catch on, do we, to when the mind is proliferating. We've been talking a little bit about what we call papancha, or proliferation, in relation to pain, physical pain of the body, in the knees, in the back, in the legs. But it can occur any time with anybody, particularly if the mind has an inclination in that direction. And I particularly remember it was several months ago, maybe it was last year or the year before, I was with an anagarika, a male anagarika. We were driving towards Hemel Hospital because I was going to have a special appointment with a doctor. It was the Saturday night. I'd asked for a special appointment at the weekend just to check something out with this doctor, or with a doctor. And on the way, the anagarika all he was doing was driving me from here to Hemel Hospital. So on the way, his mind starts moving, he's a great proliferator. So he starts saying, well, I think we'll have to park in the Tesco car park because there won't be any car parking spaces in the hospital. You know, there never are. He kept worrying about that one. Then he went on to, and then when you get there and you've seen that doctor, he'll probably recommend that you go to another hospital to be received. So we'll have to drive you there and spend the night in that hospital with you. And I was just astounded. He went on and created these towers of possibilities. How do you get him to stop? Anyway, we got to the hospital, and it turned out we could park just beside where the A&E was, because it was the weekend, there were free spaces, so they said, oh, just use those spaces. And then at the end of the appointment, the doctor said, well, just go to this chemist, pharmacist, and get this prescription. And then, so what we did was we drove to the pharmacist, got the medicine, and came back. But he'd been in absolute agony on the way in, imagining all these things. So it's tendencies that we can all get into, but that some more than others. So it's recognizing what's going on. It's just like as we sit here in meditation, understanding and recognizing what's going on with the thinking process. What are we getting ourselves into? You know, we can go miles down the line on a particular train of thought, and we haven't even realized it. But the point of this is to catch ourselves, catch where is it we've got to now, and then come back to something real, the body, the breath, this moment. What am I doing right now? When this Anagarik became a novice, they gave him the name non-proliferation. But he left after a few months. And Ajahn, you spoke earlier about patient endurance in regard to pain threshold and trying to stay with it. What if that pain becomes so unbearable and you know your own limitations? Surely it would be wise to listen to your body rather than ignore it. Pain is a signal of the body's discomfort and a guideline to prevent it being damaged, i.e. pulled muscles, tendons, tender joints. I would like your view on this, please. So yes, I agree with you. I wouldn't ask you to do that if you really are in danger of suffering some kind of injury. I wouldn't want you to do that. But I'm talking from experience because you can, on the whole, we can bear a little bit more than we think we can. And we can get into these realms of worry around tendons and muscles and so on, and joints. So it's got to be a matter for you to judge. I'm just encouraging you in a certain direction. You can bear a bit more pain and a bit more discomfort than you imagine, because that's what we find in our practice. We can do that. Through the practice, you can go into the pain and observe the energies. And when you do that, you observe change. Things shift around. And suddenly it's not so bad. Maybe the discomfort is moved to a different place. Then you have to go to that place. And then it moves to a different place. So it's got to be a matter for you and your judgment. If your body is older and less flexible, maybe it's the right thing to do, to move. But I promise you, it's worth investigating and trying to bear with things just a little bit more. Because in this culture, this modern age, we are told and taught that we cannot bear any pain at all. Oh, here's a drug, here's a shot to relieve the pain, and so on. And yet, pleasure and pain are both a part of our experience as human beings. It's the way things are. So if we constantly block out one and only have the other, there's something there we're missing out on. So one of the problems is that we seem to be stuck with a view that this body is, and the sense organs, the sense bases and the sense objects are an endless source of pleasure. So we keep going out using the sense bases on more pleasure. But somehow the body shouldn't give me pain. The modern world is all about distraction and pleasure. And there's something missing in this. Something missing that helps us to grow up. This is an interesting one. When can we meditate in the big temple? More or less any time, really. So the temple is available to the public. You know, the gates of the monastery are open at 6:30 in the morning. They close around 9:30 or 10 at night. Anyone is welcome to come in. We don't control who comes into the monastery, and they can come and sit in the temple. All we ask is take your shoes off when you go in. Show respect when you're in the temple, don't damage anything, and you're very welcome to use the big temple at any time. But on retreats we use this particular shrine room here, because obviously people are going to be coming in and out of the temple all the time, as particularly is the case on a Sunday afternoon. This is a question about the meditation on the body. When meditating and concentrating on the body, why start at the feet? I was taught the head, something, shoulders, head first, shoulders, and then downwards, relieves tension and releases negativity and energizes through the toes. That's fine. Let's go ahead and start at the top and go down through the body. Personally, I tend to do it the other way, but that's just a particular idiosyncrasy of mine, I guess. So if you want to start at the head, that's fine. There's no problem with that at all. It's up to each person how they do it. So, a brief one on this. So, lust is a sin stroke hindrance. What about love? Kama Sutra. Do I have to be celibate to uphold the faith? Every man. No, is the answer. So lust is a part of nature. It's part of life and a part of nature. We have animal bodies. We procreate just like other animals do. Certainly I wouldn't... Well, in the Buddhist tradition we don't tend to refer to lust as a sin. We talk about defilement. It's not quite the same. So not a sin, but more a kind of obstacle or a hindrance. If the mind is frequently enslaved by lust, then it is difficult to see things clearly and to develop the path. Right? So it's a kind of, it's looking at it in an objective way. It's not saying you shouldn't experience this, or you're a bad person, or you'll go to hell because you have lust. But know it for what it is. It's a part of nature. So lust helps to keep the race going, or the people being born and so on. Within the lay life, within the household life, it's one of the pleasures of the householder, having sex. But if you want to make progress in terms of spiritual development, you have to know about it and understand it as a force in nature. So if lust is constantly enslaving us, we're a prisoner to lust, and we know that there are people like this. There are constantly cases coming up in the newspapers, aren't there? People who are sort of completely in that realm. It isn't a help in terms of spiritual development and understanding. So we have to get a kind of perspective on it. I'm not saying it's evil, but we see into these things. What causes its arising? What helps to cause its passing away? If the mind goes to, we say the word mental mind adverts, if it goes to certain topics or images or subjects, then of course it stimulates the lust. So do you want to know about that or not? Do you want to understand how your mind works or not? If you want just to blindly follow the forces of nature, it's up to you. But if you're interested in cultivating the path, then you will want to know about how these things arise and how they pass, what helps to dispel them, because it's seen to in the development of practice as something of an obstacle, along with ill will or sloth and torpor or restlessness and worry. So no, it's not a sin. Okay, let's chant. Well, just before we go, I'd just like to thank the Thai person who wrote me a note, which begins, "Come on, Ajahn." So I'll just say one or two words in Thai, if you don't mind. Sawadika, Khobun Ma. ยมไม่เข้าใจอาตมาที่อาตมาพูดแล้วก็มีความไม่เข้าใจอาจารย์พูดไทยได้บ้างแล้วก็ถ้าอยากมาคุยกันหน่อยวันนี้พรุ่งนี้เมื่อไรก็ได้เราคุยกันได้บ้าง So let's go to May I Abide in Well-Being, page 43. Now let us start the reflections on universal well-being. May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings be released from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and its results will be their own. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts they will be theirs. So we'll meet again at 2 o'clock. So we've got the meal coming up and the meal offering. Just remember to be with whatever you're doing mindfully and hopefully in a good positive state of mind. So some quite interesting questions. I've not been able to focus much on this retreat. Things go better if I'm aware of outside noises, birds, planes, etc., without judging or labelling them. I also sometimes find it useful to stay aware of the thing, brackets, part of me that is the observer, just a little. So I observe the object and the things that arise, thoughts, pain, and stay aware of the observer just a little. Is this bad practice? So I would say no. It sounds like good practice. Because you're awake and aware, you're observing, you're being in touch with what's going on. That's all very good. So maybe, you can't get some obvious, easy collectedness of mind or concentration, but your awareness is growing all the time from the sound of it. So I would be, feel content with what you're doing and carry on. And but we'll also, don't forget that things can change. Sometimes it gets easier to concentrate than others. That's certainly been the case in my own experience. One time concentration was very poor, and then it seemed to get better. So I'll leave that there for the moment. What role, if any, next question, what role, if any, do psychedelic plants or medicines like, here we get into the writing, it could be ayahuasca, psilocybin and peyote, have to play in aiding an individual along their path? Is their use legitimate and beneficial, or deplorable and damaging to practice? Well, there was a time when a lot of young junior monks would read the books of Carlos Castaneda and all the hallucinatory experiences and so on. And we've still got those books there. Personally, I don't think psychedelic substances have much role in enlightenment or in liberation or any other kind of chemical. How can a chemical do the job? Because once the chemical has worn away, you've lost the insight, haven't you? So it has to be done by the person. So we also have this precept number 5. I undertake the training to refrain from intoxicating drink and drugs, which lead to carelessness. I suppose someone might try and excuse, it's not carelessness, it's insight or something. But I think these drugs would fall within that category. Sorry if that disappoints you. I'm not going to use the word deplorable. It's up to you. In our modern world, everyone makes their own morality, don't they? If I sit here saying, you shouldn't do that, that's not going to work. But I say, look, what are the effects? If you use I've taken LSD once. I wouldn't want to do it again. Up to you, isn't it? See what the effects are. I don't think those substances are terribly helpful myself. It's up to you, it's your life. So number 3, I'm constantly struggling to keep my mind focused on the breath. So no one's alone in this. I keep falling asleep and nodding. Now this is where the actual question or message becomes a bit contradictory. So I'll read it out as it's written. So I'm constantly struggling to keep my mind focused on the breath. I keep falling asleep and nodding in 10 years of daily meditation and even a Goenka retreat. Then it says, I cannot recall more than a few occasions when this has happened before. It's almost as if my mind is trying to switch off from or sabotage my practice. Can you explain what might be happening, please? So, trying to make a unitary message out of this, I presume it's really about dulling out, falling asleep, being dullness. And so, I can't say what the cause is. The body and mind interact. We talk about nama rupa in Buddhism, mentality, materiality, and they're connected. And they have, subtle effects on each other. So quite what mechanism is at work here, I don't know. It could be that when you enter into what you could consider to be a secure place, and the mind wants to switch off and close down. That happens. I talked about the monk that would nod when he heard Ajahn Sumedho's voice, giving a talk, start going to sleep, So you enter a secure place, everything seems nice and cozy, and the mind starts switching off. Could it be to do with that? I don't know. So I think in this case, the best thing to do is to do what you can, the best you can, to wake up. So, we've talked about various antidotes to dullness, sleepiness, sloth and torpor. So you could try those, but if they don't work, would it be better to shift to a different meditation object? Obviously there's the sound of silence, there's metta, and the other Brahma Viharas. There's the body, going into the body, exploring different parts of the body, visualizing parts of the body. And then what kind of a type of person are you, in the sense that some people relate better to visual objects, some people relate better to auditory objects, and it could be that we could even relate to a tactile object. So this is where we can use our creativity to find out what suits us. So for some people, a visual object can be very helpful. They can concentrate on it and they stay awake, and it works for them. So it might be a flower or a flame, or in traditional Buddhism what it called a kasina, something they can focus on. Or I've even seen people using coloured lights. We were doing that at Chithurst one winter retreat. There was the red light, up in one room, they had the red light and the green light and the yellow light. Why? Because we were sleeping maybe 4 hours a night. So the idea was to keep us awake by using these lights. And the Ajahn kept saying, don't use the red light. Make you angry. So that's visual. And frankly, I've never found visual objects very helpful. But what I've related better to are auditory objects. So, like when I found the breath difficult, I was sometimes going to like the sound of a clock. Or like the person mentioned in their little note, the sound of a plane, or other sounds rising and falling. Depends how you are, what kind of a person you are. There was once an occasion or an incident in the Buddha's lifetime where a particular monk could not remember the verses of the Dhamma. So the other monks, and particularly his brother, considered him to be very dull and stupid. And they said, "But why don't you disrobe? You just can't do it. You've been trying to learn these Dhamma verses for months." So the Buddha had some insight into this man's psychology. And he said, "No, what I want you to do is miss out on the alms round today. I want you to stay in the temple and sit at the front of the temple where the sun was. And he said, I want you to take a piece of white cloth, clean white cloth, and hold it in your hands. And just keep holding it and watching it." Something like that. So this man does that. He sits in the sun at the front of the temple and he's touching this cloth. Of course the sun's coming up, it's getting hotter and hotter, and the sweat's coming off his hands. And slowly that cloth is becoming soiled. You can see the cloth becoming soiled. So he's touching the cloth, and he's seeing the soiling occurring on the cloth. And through this experience, he realizes impermanence. And he actually becomes something like a Sotapanna, a stream enterer, according to the text. So this works for him, this technique works for him the way that the Dhamma verses never worked. So we're all very different. So it could be that even a tactile experience, if you're touching something that has a meaning for you, you could concentrate on that sensation, couldn't you? The touch, the feel of that particular object. So all I can say is, and don't forget walking meditation, you can try walking backwards meditation. There are all sorts of things you can try. Be bold, be experimental, and don't get stuck in this corner of safety where, once again I'm trying to watch the breath, and once again I'm nodding off. You can try and work around it. Try these other objects. Be a little bit experimental. That's my feeling. So one more. So when I meditate, I get a slight pressure and tingling sensation in my forehead and nose. What is this? I don't know. You're going to have to find out. But, as I say, everybody's body is different. We have this connection with mentality, materiality. As you focus on something, or as you make an effort with the mind, different people are affected in different ways. So, someone yesterday in one of the afternoon interactions was talking about a headache or some kind of stress or pressure they felt in their head when they concentrated on a very narrow focus. So if these physical sensations aren't harmful, it's just something arising in the moment, just like you get a mental phenomenon or a mental object arising, you get these physical phenomena arising too, and can you just observe it? Can you be with it? So it's arisen, it's present, it's present at the moment, and then at some point it disappears. You start getting, rather than worrying about it, it shouldn't be like this, or what's happening, you start to look at the rising and passing away nature of phenomena. You start to tune in more to anicca. And it's not, from the sound of it, it's not doing any harm. So, okay, we'll stop there for the moment and do a bit of sitting. How to respond instead of reacting in difficult conversations. Bound, I think it says bound, to press one's buttons. How to deliver a message to someone when you know it will be difficult and perhaps upsetting for the other person, but we can not say how we feel. So I thought I'd go to the sort of the ideal, which is the Buddha's recommendations in terms of how the Sangha should behave. So, according to the Patimokkha and the Vinaya, which is the rules, the conduct rules of the monks, nuns develop and grow through mutual admonition and rehabilitation. So, we don't go around accusing each other all the time, but if we notice that someone has done something which isn't correct with the rules and so on, then eventually a reflection will be offered. And more often it's a person themselves. If they've committed a major offence, they will admit it to the Sangha, and then some kind of procedure happens whereby they're rehabilitated. So anyway, in terms, I have to read it from the list, but in terms of the formal advice from the Buddha, there should be 4 conditions in oneself. Okay, so one should be pure in bodily and verbal conduct. One should be motivated by goodwill, not by vindictiveness. One should be learned in the Dhamma, and one should know both patimokkha, which means one should know both the monk's code of conduct and the nun's code of conduct. That's quite a lot to know. So anyway, pure in bodily and verbal conduct, well, very few of us are totally pure, but it's a good reflection, isn't it? Motivated by goodwill, not by vindictiveness. And I think that's a very crucial aspect. So in other words, if we're in an angry mood, if we're very frustrated, we might be thinking something like, well, I'm going to give that person a good piece of my mind. That's the common phrase in Britain. I'll give him or her a good piece of my mind. And then something comes out. And then how does it affect the person? Can they receive the message? Or do they just feel, oh, there's an angry, bitter, resentful character getting at me? They're feeling, where's it coming from in that person? It's a very sort of sensitive mechanism. You pick up, where's it coming from in this person? And that's what you relate to, rather than the message. So if we are coming from vindictiveness or from anger, they pick that up instantly. So then there are 5 conditions around the time of this reflection. One is to speak at the right time and not at the wrong time. So that's a very crucial aspect. Is the person Are they caught up in something? Are they too busy to hear? Are they in a foul mood themselves? Has there been an incident in the recent past which is going to will affect what you're doing now, so it all flares up? You have to take all this into account. Again, can they hear? Will they hear what you're saying if you do it at the wrong time? And this is important. You should speak about what's factually happened, not about other things. So the other things could be your opinions of that person. You're a such and such, aren't you? Or what others have said. They said that about you. But if you can keep it down to the factual problem that's actually happened, speak gently and not harshly. Keep it relevant to the case, to that particular incident, and to the objective that you have, which is presumably to ask to get that person not to repeat the behaviour. And then speak with a mind of goodwill, not with a mind of aversion. So it's sort of overlapping with the other little list, isn't it? So very few of us perhaps can manage all of those conditions, but we can hold them in mind. Am I angry? Am I coming from vindictiveness? And if you are in that state, maybe you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't approach the other person. But if you've got to a calm state, an equable state, an equanimous state, where you're feeling balanced, and you really do want to come and offer someone a reflection as a way of helping them. Because if this person keeps repeating these behaviours in all kinds of contexts with different kinds of people, they're going to be more and more miserable as people reject them. So you can help someone and influence them by offering, coming from a heart of goodwill, a reflection about what's happened, but in a kind of gentle way. So that's what we try to do. We don't always succeed. But I just thought I'd mention as a kind of inspiring example or model, Ajahn story. Now he was a junior monk in the monastery at Harnham, which was a small monastery, so you can imagine 4 or 5 monks impacting quite a lot on each other. They can't hide away from each other very much. And the abbot was quite a strong abbot, with very strong views about how things should be done. And there was a lot of resentment growing among the other monks. But they knew that the abbot couldn't hear. If they had tried to remonstrate with him, he would have slapped them down. So Ajahn knew this, and he had these various things in his mind, but he decided to sit on them and not. So he's practicing patience. Another key aspect, isn't it? To be patient with the situation if you can. So he practiced patience for 2 years. And I know you'll say this isn't possible. And then one day he was with the abbot, and they were down at Chithurst, and they were having a nice relaxed tea or something, and he said, "Oh, by the way, have you any idea about how the other monks saw that particular period or those particular events?" And the abbot said, no. And so Ajahn was able to drop something in to his ear, and the abbot was amazed. Really? They saw it like that? He was astounded. So he said, "Well, this is so interesting. I want to continue the conversation tonight after the puja." So they met that evening and went on for 2 hours or something. Or was it 5 hours? I don't know. Anyway, they talked a long, long time. And so Ajahn was able to go through it he's very, very diplomatic. And he would go through it in a very kind of calm and gentle way and just drop things in at the right moment. And, it was quite a total eye-opener for the abbot. So that's a kind of ideal, that you wait to the right time when that person is open to hearing. Because the principle is, if they can't hear you, it's just going to be a war of words, isn't it? So you don't get through to them. And then I had this problem with my sister. I love my sister, but I just find it's very difficult to sort of, so I just try to be patient with what I find to be quite difficult verbal behaviours, So if you can't get through, what's the point? I don't know. If anyone has any alternative views on this, I'm happy to hear it. So I have vivid and real visualizations of me fulfilling my life's purpose. That is, I see myself in action as I have already done, had these experiences. I don't feel my mind is trying to solve any problem and or manifest a future desired outcome. So, could it be helpful, or am I lost in thoughts even if they arise from periods of stillness? Well, again and again the Buddha is saying, don't dwell in the future or create the future. Don't dwell in the past. Bring the attention to this present moment, because it's in the present moment that we can practice towards liberation. It's the present moment that we can let go of things. It's the present moment that we can penetrate to the truth of things. So if our mind is dwelling far away in clouds about the future, unfortunately we can't be present to do that. So there was an interesting little quote, and that is to do with some dignitary or high king or somebody went to the monastery of the Buddha and he said, "Why is it, Lord, that," whatever he called him, "why is it that in your monastery the monks look so kind of healthy and happy and they've got good complexions, whereas in other groups I've been to, the ascetics seem to be very pale and miserable," and something like this. So the Buddhist reply, in a rather formal language here, "They make no lamentation over the past. They yearn not after that which is not come. They satisfy themselves by depending on what they receive. Hence comes it that they look serene of hue." So in other words, if we're constantly yearning for the future or dwelling on the past, somehow we're just not present. The only real time we're alive is when we're in the present. Otherwise we're living in the past, in the memory, it's just a memory, or we're living in a projection, a kind of anticipation of what might happen. And that somehow is always detracting from what we can do now. So Ajahn Sumedho's advice was always very constant. He said, yesterday is just a memory, tomorrow is unknown, now is the knowing. I think he stopped using that after. But that was the general tone. So, if you want to practice, it's about recognizing where's the mind gone to, what can I do now in this present moment. So as I say, if we can come back into the present moment, we begin to see opportunities we might not otherwise notice. We're mainly, all of us, dwelling in the past or the future. And when are we truly alive? It's when we're here in the present. So we can paint a beautiful roseate picture. Then, in those days, back when I was in New Zealand, I was so happy. Or if I get to go to some other place, it would be really great. But now, of course, it's not so good because blah, 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 blah. But then if you come into the present moment and start to look at this, well, it's a nice sunny day. You're among people who are harmless. No one's going to kill you or rob you. You're going to get a meal cooked by someone else in a moment. Okay. Right. So I'll stop there. Let's have a little sit, shall we, for now. I think I'm experiencing doubt about meditation. Practicing mindfulness when sitting formally or in everyday situations feels like such an effort and a chore. When practice is unsatisfactory, I can contemplate the unsatisfaction. But when it seldom seems to go well and doesn't seem to change or improve, I worry that I can't sustain it. I can't keep going forever if I never sense any progress. I want to develop and be skilled at this. Have you experienced these doubts, and can you give me any advice, please? Well, this is a classic case of the fifth hindrance, and I don't think there's anyone who hasn't experienced doubt when the going is difficult. And there always are going to be difficult times, and you might think, well, they'll never end. But this is where you need to watch, because they'll never end. That's denying what we would call anicca, impermanence. So again and again people have to, I mean there are natural meditators, people who sort of slip through it all and seem to enjoy incredibly concentrated states very easily and so on and so forth. But most of us have to, it's a slog, we have to work at it. So you put in the work and sooner or later something changes. But you have to keep going, you see. If you stop at that point, it doesn't. So sooner or later you have a good meditation or something goes right and then you think, wow, I had a really good meditation, it's all coming together, I can see the end in sight, you know. So part of this is doubt, part of it is of course this thing about dukkha and clinging, holding on to something. So yeah, practice is unsatisfactory, so why, you know, look at that, can you look at that, go down a level, okay, the practice is unsatisfactory, I'm feeling unhappy, it's not going right, there is dukkha, that's dukkha, isn't it? And dukkha has a cause, right? So what's the cause here? Isn't it holding on to some perception of how things should be? How I should be, how the meditation should be? And can you let go of that? And something may begin to float up. It's when we have these strong desires or strong images of how things should be that we're sort of, you know, in a sense, inhibiting movement forward. So all I can recommend is keep going, don't give up, and watch that space. Is it always going to be just like this? Or will something shift and change? Could you please elaborate on who is experiencing this emotion regarding handling disturbing emotions? So I think it was last night or sometime I was walking around the field worrying, and then I noticed that there was two things there. One was the walking and the other was the worrying. But what about the me? It's the me that makes all the difference. If it's me walking and worrying, then I've got problems, haven't I? But if I can see it's just this, there's a body walking and there is worrying, that's all there is. Suddenly the problem isn't there. There's just me walking, or a body walking, and there's worrying. Does this make any sense? No, probably not. So this is a potentially deep question, isn't it? Who? You say me, or what is you? So in the Buddhist approach, we start to look at what we regard as me. So is it the body? Is the body you? And we know that the body's molecules change completely every 7 years. The body that you had as a 2-year-old or a 10-year-old is very different to the body you have now. And at 60 and 80, it'll be different again. So how constant is that body? Is it really you? And then in the Western model we have the mind. And so we also think of a soul. But obviously the mind also changes. So your mind when you were age 3, what was in the mind? What kind of thoughts did you have? What was your vision of the world? When you were 18, what was your vision of the world? How did you think? And when you were 28 and when you are, if you're older than 28, what is it now? It changes at each stage. The mind, you know. So in terms of the Buddha's analysis, this is perhaps shocking to some of you, the Buddhist analysis comes back to what we call 5 khandhas or 5 aggregates. One of these aggregates is the physical form, the body. It's called rupa or form. And the other 4 aggregates are all to do with mentality, to do with the mind. And those other 4 aggregates are Vedana, which is feeling, Sanya, perception, Samkhara, which is mental formations, and Vijnana, which is consciousness. According to the Buddha, this is what makes up the human being.
or in fact, if you want to extend it, all reality. So these 5 khandhas come together, and there is the human being. But according to the Buddhist analysis, as the person gets into old age and then is approaching death, these 5 khandhas, or aggregates, come apart. So we see people suffering from dementia if the body's still functioning, but the mind can't function very well. Or their mind's okay, but their body's falling apart. Or some aspect of their mentality is failing. For example, memory. That's very common, isn't it? Old people can't remember. They can't remember what they did with the teaspoon 5 minutes ago. My mother has constant problem. You know, you set up an appointment with my mum, I'll be round at 3, or something like this, and she goes somewhere else. Or she doesn't even remember. Someone turns up to pick her up, you know, she's having lunch when she should have been going out to lunch with this person. So in Buddhist terms, if you like, who am I to say about this, but in Buddhist terms, the khandhas are coming apart. That which came together, causes and conditions, brought them together, and now beginning to come apart. It's beginning, if you like, to, in the English phrase, to unravel. So we can start to question, now according to the Buddhist analysis, there is no solid entity there. There's nothing actually at the core of all of this. And I'll give you the images he offers, the similes he offers. Rupa, form, which we think is so solid, the body, the buildings, all of which of course are changing. Rupa is just a mass of froth. Vedana, the feeling, the wanting, the liking, the not liking, pleasant, unpleasant, and neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Vedana is just like bubbles on the surface of water. Sanya, the perception, how we fit a sense impression to a memory and recognize it. You know, oh, that's a man, that's a woman, that's something else. Sanya, perception, is just the mirage in his simile. Sankhara, which all the thinking that goes on around the perceptions and the feelings, all the wantings, the volitions, this is just like a trunk of a plantain tree, which is like a banana tree. You can unravel one thing after another, all these kind of leaves, and there's nothing at the heart of it. And the final one is vijnana, which he compares consciousness. He compares it to a conjuring trick. So it's all maybe very shocking for you. But anyway, the encouragement is to explore who is experiencing this emotion. If there isn't a self there, I'm not saying there isn't, I'm just saying we've got to explore this. If there isn't a self there, then it's just a disturbing emotion, isn't it? If it's a disturbing emotion afflicting me, I've got real problems, haven't I? If it's just a disturbing emotion that arises, it's there at the moment, I can know it for what it is, it's a disturbing emotion. And then gradually it begins to fade. And suddenly it's not there anymore. Is that me? I think we'll sit for half an hour.